The war between Russia and Ukraine is escalating on the eastern and southern fronts. As the war in Ukraine hardens in the direction of Bakhmut and Melitopol, the Russian missile threat to the west of Ukraine continues. When the latest reports are examined, a Russian missile may attack Lviv at any time, because whenever the eastern pressure of the Ukrainian armed forces increased, Russia's missiles turned to the west. As you may recall, after Ukraine's Kharkiv and Kherson raids, Putin launched attacks on Kiev with Iskander cruise missiles. After the attacks on the Ukrainian capital Kiev, Putin stated that these attacks were in retaliation for the attacks on the Kerch Bridge in Crimea and later deep into Russia. However, the most important point here was that Crimea was attacked and Putin's reaction to it, because Putin, who could not afford to risk the Crimea, took much more serious measures and attacks to distract attention. Ukraine's Western allies, on the other hand, are trying to defend the Ukrainian airspace by sending a very serious defense support to Ukraine after these attacks. We even saw the first Patriot air defense system arrive in Ukraine these days. However, NATO sensed a serious danger for itself in Russia's attacks on western Ukraine and mobilized its troops in Eastern Europe. NATO has recently increased its military presence on the Russian border almost 8 times. There are 130,500 NATO soldiers in Poland, 20,800 in Lithuania, 9,000 in Estonia, 9,100 in Latvia, 15,100 in Slovakia, 79,300 in Romania, 24,800 in Hungary, and 26,900 in Bulgaria. At the same time, a very serious shipment of warplanes and armored vehicles was carried out to the NATO Eastern Bloc. The US Army wants to turn the Eastern Bloc into an impenetrable wall, and in this regard, it has equipped the countries in the Eastern Bloc with the most advanced weapons and special units in the last 3 months. In recent shipments, the US has sent 20 AH-64 Apache attack helicopters to Latvia, 1 squadron of F-22 fighter jets, 1 Division M1A2 Abrams tank to Poland. In addition, HIMARS, Patriot, NASAMS systems were deployed to Eastern Bloc countries. Currently, the Russian and Belarusian borders are blockaded by HIMARS and Patriot systems, and at least 2 F-35 squadrons are stationed at nearby air bases. The largest share in the NATO task force belongs to the US Army, and with the latest statements, the presence of the US Army in Europe is over 100,000 troops. In January, it was announced that the US military presence in Europe was around 80,000. With subsequent deployments, this number is estimated to be over 110,000 troops. Potential deployments are particularly concentrated around Russia's European territory, Kaliningrad, along with Poland's border with Ukraine and Belarus. On the other hand, a serious shipment is made to the Baltic countries. Preparations are increasing day by day as a result of a possible Russian attack. The United States brought its military numbers in Europe to the point of the Cold War long beforehand. It is stated that the number of US troops in Europe has exceeded 110,000 and that even more troops will need to be sent. Pentagon officials have announced that US troops sent around Europe on special missions may also need to stay in the region for an extended period of time. In fact, some units are thought to be permanent in Eastern Europe, and especially in Poland. It is thought that Russia's hitting civilian infrastructures in Ukraine and the heavy defeats suffered by the Russian army at the front will lead Putin to a great stalemate and infuriate him even more. For this reason, the North Atlantic Alliance, on the one hand, is now taking initiatives for Ukraine to join NATO, and on the other hand, it creates a great deterrent by making the Eastern Bloc of the alliance an impassable wall. This wall is actually very important in 2 ways. The first is to definitively prevent a Russian attack that may overflow from Ukraine, and the other, and much more importantly, is the presence of a deterrent NATO force in the region against Russia. The start of official applications by Finland and Sweden to NATO presents new excuses for the USA to make a much stronger defense on the Baltic, while Finland's participation in NATO, which has been a neighbor of Russia for many years, creates a crisis in the Kremlin. The USA is trying to turn this crisis into an opportunity, because the main reason for Putin's Ukraine operation was that Russia did not want NATO soldiers on its borders. However, it is far from the power and deterrence to carry out the operation it did in Ukraine, in Finland. That's why the US Congress announced on December 20th the government funding bill for 2023, which includes an allocation of $225 million as part of the Baltic Security Initiative, whose defense budget is $45 million, or 20% more than 2022. According to the Estonian Defense Ministry, the United States will support countries affected by Russia's aggression with a total of $350 million as part of their defense budget. Jonathan Vseviov, Secretary General of the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, said, "This decision is a clear example of the long and determined support of the United States to the Baltic states." Estonian Defense Minister Hanno Pevkur said, "This year, we have made significant progress in increasing our defense spending and strengthening our defense, and US support is helping us further develop our independent defense capability." Jonathan Vseviov also said that this is an important step that is the result of Estonia's long-term work. Estonia is very important to the USA and NATO because Estonia forms a bridge to Finland. Considering that the strait established between the port of Tallinn in Estonia and the port of Helsinki in Finland will restrict the port of St. Petersburg, Russia may put Estonia on the target board. For this reason, it will be inevitable for NATO to take very serious measures in the region. In addition to the Baltic countries, support will be allocated to other countries bordering Russia. $35 million will be given to Poland, $30 million to Romania, $20 million to Bulgaria, and $40 million to Georgia. Funding is project-based, and implementation of projects will be coordinated by the United States European Command. In addition to the $9 billion allocated to Ukraine, an additional $300 million will be allocated. The Baltic Security Initiative, created in 2020, enables the United States to support the development of independent defense capabilities of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, as well as their interoperability in a more systematic way. Under the initiative, $169 million was allocated to the Baltic states last year. With US security assistance, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania were able to implement many of their military infrastructure and capability development projects faster than originally planned. The main focus has been on the development of special operations, air defense, ammunition stockpiles, naval situational awareness, and long-range indirect fire capability. At the same time, the air defense of these regions is much more prominent. Considering that the general philosophy of Russia's attack is airstrikes, the presence of the US Air Force in the region makes Russia more uneasy. The Iron Eagles of the US Army took charge of aviation in Europe. Air Cavalry Brigade, 1st Cavalry Division, officially their colors, Combat Aviation Brigade, known as Iron Eagles, ceremony of authorization was held at 33rd Air Base in Poland. It is stated that the main purpose of these assignments is not to reflect Russia's attacks in Ukraine to Eastern Europe. A Polish Air Force C-130 cargo plane and Mi-17 helicopter held inside a large aviation hangar from the background of the ceremony, while Iron Eagle's aircraft can be lined up front and center. Outside of these operations and exercises, US Army artillery reached Latvia as the Allies tried to deter Russia. Service officials said the US Army is sending long-range artillery to Latvia for national combat readiness exercises, as well as local and allied forces. US Army Europe and Africa said it had deployed 2 M142 high-motion artillery rocket systems with a dozen personnel in the Baltic nation, where security concerns were raised after Russia's full-fledged invasion of Ukraine in February. Colonel Richard Ekena, artillery commander of the 1st Infantry Division, said the mission highlights the Army's ability to take up positions quickly anywhere in the European campaign. It was emphasized that the main reason for this was that NATO forces should be prepared in the face of a possible Russian attack. The HIMARS system entered Army service in 2005. The heavy warheads and rocket range of roughly 50 miles are credited by military analysts as helping to balance Russia's numerical advantage as Ukraine seeks to regain territory east and south. It is a fact that these weapons still increase the advantage of the Ukrainian armed forces. Vladimir Putin saw that he could now only threaten Europe with outlier attacks. However, The West is unresponsive to Putin on this issue because he has been showing tongues under the table with empty threats for almost 1 year. These US deployments are in open contact with Russia, and the tension between these two countries may not be limited to Ukraine. Thanks for watching.